Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Raising Good Parents. I'm really excited today because we're talking about coping skills. And I have a licensed mental health counselor, Janine Halloran, who is an expert on coping skills. And we were talking before we started recording about coping skills and I'm sure that's the most Googled term in all of 2020 after COVID and Instacart and all those sorts of things, because it's just everybody is trying to figure out how to cope better with all of this. And for kids, it can be especially tough. And your online presence, Coping Skills for Kids, is just such a great resource. So I'm so excited to get to talk to you today. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and then how you got into the space of helping parents with coping skills?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me onto the show. I have been working with children and teens and their families for about 20 years now. And I decided that I wanted to be a therapist when I was in high school, really. I was a high schooler when I decided that I really liked to do that. And I remember being in graduate school and they would always say, oh my gosh. So, when people are sitting down and you're talking with them, you want to help them come up with their coping skills. And I was like, okay, so what are their coping skills? And they gave me like 3 things, and good things. Don't get me wrong. It was good things. It was like deep breathing. You want to try progressive muscle relaxation, like really good strategies. But I was like,
right.
When I went to actually work with kids and then you're sitting there and you're like, yeah, I'm out of my 3 strategies. So what do I do now?
Oh my gosh, you just nailed it, because I'm like, well, did you try deep breathing? Yeah. Oh, and that didn't work. And did you try progressive muscle relaxation? Yeah. Oh, and that didn't work. And there's many times where I'm like, I really need to lead with like, what have you tried already? Because before I explain things to you that you've already tried, I should probably know those things. And dang it, when they've already gone down the list and been like, yeah, we tried that. So yes, I get that like you need more coping skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And at that time, I really liked working in school. So I liked working with kids in schools. And school can be really stressful and anxiety provoking, and actually like pretty angry kids go to school too. You know what I mean? So you're just trying to figure out what strategies are going to work for that kid in the moment. And if a kid is like literally throwing books, like I'm not going to ask him to do deep breathing at that moment. That's not
Right.
like legit. It's like it's not going to work. So I really, over time, I started to like listen to the clients, listen to the students, listen to the kids, ask them, what are the things that are working for you? Like after things went go down, like I noticed that it really helped when we took a little bit of a walk. I noticed that it helped when you took a sip of water. Looking at research, there's a lot of research that's coming out now, especially around mindfulness. And so I really like to introduce that to my clients. It doesn't work for everybody, or some kids really don't, dig it, and that's fine. But
Sure.
it's really, it's clinically, and it's clinically sound because it's research based, and I like that. And then also what I've just noticed with working with kids over the years, especially as a school counselor, sometimes you don't know all the kids so intimately as you know your personal private clients. And so you'd
Sure.
have to really you walk into a situation and they're like, we need your help. This kid is out of control and we don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, what's their name? And so
Right.
and so it's like, it's really, you get a sense of, okay, what are things that work best for kids in that moment when they just are having a really challenging time. And so I really enjoyed sort of gathering all those coping skills, and I kept looking for this book where it had all this like a whole collection of them. And finally, my husband looks at me and he said, "You keep looking for this book. You've been looking for this book for 10 years of your clinical career. It doesn't exist. Can you
Yeah.
please just write it?" So
Right. And so that is something that you've done, is you've developed workbooks and courses and everything, which I love, and it's such a great way for families to have that information. So let's dive in. I love that example, and we were talking before we started a little bit about like 4th grade and 5th grade was like a sweet spot for you, which I said it is for me because we have those at our house. And so tell me, if we're talking about an elementary school child, what are you seeing since, everything that's went on in 2020? What are some of the issues that parents and children are facing at this moment?
oh my gosh, so many. And I think the first thing I want to say is it's not all bad for all kids. And
Sure.
and that's really something that has shocked me. Because as an adult going through COVID, I am, it was very hard at the beginning. There were lots of tears and like really, and it was
Right.
very, challenging. But for all of my private clients, I would actually say all of them, they all are dealing with like anxiety and ADHD. So there's like, they need a lot of movement, right? Um, but they all transitioned the best. All of my identified clients transitioned the best out of their families to life in COVID. It was the
Yeah.
most strange thing. And every time I talk to a parent, they'd be like, Janine, I don't even understand. Like they're smooth sailing. Like they do better than all the
Right.
rest of us together. So
Well, I think that speaks to the resilience of children too, and the flexibility. Because I remember in July and August, like my whole focus of all my online stuff was how to get kids to comfortably wear masks, and now it's like not even a thing. Like I don't think I've gotten one request to not wear masks or had kids that are just like refusing. It's like, well, because we realize that it's required and it's not that big of a deal. Like kids have moved through things so much better. So I'm glad to hear that that has been the experience of your clients too.
yeah, absolutely. And this is not to say that it's not challenging. One of the
Right.
things that's been really hard is different households have different rules. So
Sure.
what is comfortable for one friend's house is not comfortable for another friend's house, or the friend whose parents are not letting them out at all, or the
Hmm.
friend whose parents are letting them have sleepovers and like letting them
Right.
stay together in like the same room unmasked for like hours on end. And so
Yes.
that's been really tricky for my kids because, they are, and my own family too, they're trying to figure out what are good boundaries and what are the rules in our house versus what are the rules in other people's houses, but also wanting to have some time with friends. The balance also of like screen time can be really hard
Sure.
because that is how they're interacting for the most part. They're interacting with like that in school. They're interacting on Discord, and they're going on Roblox, and they're playing Minecraft, and they're able to communicate and share, and they're playing Among Us. They're having good times together, but like sometimes it gets to be a little much, and you want to try and figure out what's that good balance of like how much screen time is too much screen time, and
Right.
it's so challenging.
So when you are working with a client or called in and the child, I love your example of throwing books. When you're walking through some of the coping skills, like we've talked on other episodes with other therapists about progressive muscle relaxation and deep breathing and those sort of things. But if you're seeing a child who, as a parent, is in the midst of a meltdown, who is, looking at them while they're totally out of control, where can a parent start at that moment? Because telling a child that's throwing books to just take some deep breaths is probably not going to do much. So where should a parent start if that's where they're starting from?
So the first thing I would tell the parents is actually, I know this sounds really silly, but for them to take a deep breath and for them to get
Right.
themselves in a calm space. So I like to think of when you are in a situation where a kid is out of control, like they're having a hard time controlling their emotions, their body is out of control, they're having a hard time keeping it all together. We need to be the thermostat. We need to set the temperature. We don't need to be the thermometer and rise and fall with it. Yes, it is frustrating. I get it as a parent. If a kid is really like angry and frustrated and doing like wrecking my property or throwing things,
Right.
it's really hard to stay calm, but it really does help. It doesn't help the situation if a parent escalates. It helps the situation to stay calm. And it is hard to do that. And it's nice if you can co-parent with somebody and you know that you're getting like it's too much for you and you just need to tap out and like have somebody else step in. So
Right.
recognizing that moment right there is not a teachable moment. You just need to get them to a place where they're a little bit calmer. So the way that you do that is keeping yourself calm, but then also keeping your words to a minimum and saying one tiny phrase and repeating that, like I'm here when you're ready, or I'm ready whenever you are able to talk to me. I'm here, I'm listening, something short and simple, because it will eventually stop. And then the work begins when they are calmer. Afterwards, that's when you can have the conversation about, gosh, what went wrong? What happened? What led up to that? What was going on with, what were your thoughts? What were your feelings as that was happening? Do you remember what you were thinking and feeling when you were throwing the book? Like what was going on? and what helped you calm down, and what can we do next time? That is the
Mm,
hugest piece of it. So when it happens again, because it will happen again, what
right.
can we do? What can we do differently? How can I help you? How can I support you? What are the things that will help you? And for a kid who has a lot of like big energy, I really love using movement coping skills. So, like having them do wall push ups, having them do jumping jacks, having them run around the house, like literally run around the outside of my house. I've had my son do that. And, figuring out what are those like maybe even small body movements, squeezing something like squeezing Play-Doh, squeezing and doing bubble wrap, or like something else that's really, the therapy. Have you ever done that before?
Sure. Hmm.
I love therapy, especially like for like the kids who have like a lot of big emotions. They want to like squeeze something really hard. I get the most tense, the biggest one that I can get. I think it's the black one where it's like the hardest one to squeeze. I'm like, squeeze it as hard as you can, get all that energy out,
Right.
and trying to figure out good, safe, healthy ways to get out that anger, because that anger is okay. And that's what I say to the kids, and I say that to the parents. It's okay to be angry. Angry is an emotion that we all will feel as humans. What you
Right.
do with that anger is that's the thing that you need to really pay attention to. And being able to figure out those ways that are safe and healthy, not going to hurt yourself, not going to hurt other people, not going to damage property. Okay, let's figure that out. Let's figure that out together.
That is so wise because I think in the moment, a lot of parents just want to shut it down or feel like they have to shut it down, or then they're not teaching their child a lesson. And it's, whoa, 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 don't do that. Go to your room, or you're out of control, or, I'm going to stop you, or something along those lines. And then it just escalates it and it turns the temperature up for everybody. And I love that thought about being the thermostat, because instead, if you can just say, here, we're going to turn things down to 68 degrees and things are going to cool down. It's going to take a little time to go from 74 or 94 down to 68, but I'm going to be here and I'm going to help you to cool down. And then we can figure out, well, why did we escalate like that? And to just continue on with that metaphor of like, well, why is it so hot? I mean, did we leave a window open and so now all, the hot air came in? Or is the fireplace going? Like, what is causing it to get so warm in here? And helping the child to figure that out for themselves.
Yep, and to make a plan. Make a plan for the next time that happens. What is gonna be the thing that we go to instead of throwing the book when we get to that place again? So yeah, I think it's great.
And that's something that I talk to parents about all the time too, is next time. We're talking about next time. We're not talking about this time. We're not talking about the throwing the books in this moment. That doesn't matter. It's already come to pass and it's going to stop and we'll get through that. But then how can we be better prepared for next time? So let's keep this scenario going of, we threw the books, we're calming down. Does there need to be a punishment that goes along with the throwing of the books, of the behavior that we don't want to happen next time? Do you find that a punishment helps to cement that, or what's your take, or how do you handle that?
I try to think about it as repairing. So what
Okay.
can we do to repair the relationship? What can we do to repair something that has been broken? So if you're throwing books, one of the things that we can do is put the books back. If you need a little bit of help, I'll be here to help you. But we need to put things back the way that they were. And truthfully, if there's, my son struggled a lot with big emotions when he was very little. We actually made his room like very, very like user friendly in terms of like not throwing things. So like we took the
Right.
bookshelf out. We took, like, it was only soft toys. You know what I mean? So I was like, this is
Yes.
fine. And sometimes you have to do that, and that's just something you like recognize. Like, where are the struggles, where are the tough points, and are there things that you can do to make the environment more friendly and make it a little bit easier to sort of manage, so that you're not getting like a Tonka truck thrown at you. Those are heavy, dude.
Right.
So you want to just try and figure out how to repair it. And if you get mad, because parents will get mad, and if you are getting frustrated and you end up yelling and you end up getting like having a hard time with your emotions, that's also a time that you can repair. So you can say, I'm sorry, I was having a hard day, or it was a hard moment for me, I was worried
Right.
about you, I wanted you to
Right.
stop, and I didn't know what to do. So to own that is huge. When
Oh my
adults
gosh.
apologize, kids are like, what is happening right now?
Well, I think it's so important too, because if you portray yourself as perfect, then your child is going to see you and think, well, I always make mistakes. I'm never going to be like my mom or dad. I'm never going to be that good. Why should I even try? But if they see, wow, my parent just got down at my level and said, I'm sorry for yelling, that's huge, because it's admitting that you made a mistake and explaining how that could have happened and saying, I'm going to repair things just like you had to repair the book that you threw across the room and broke. And so I'm going to repair things too, from a relationship standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that means like maybe having a time where you can just play a game together or watch a TV show together, something that's chill and will not escalate situations, something that just repairs it, because that's part of learning how to be in relationship with other people, is like mistakes will happen, people will make you mad. How do you fix that? How do you move forward from that? And how can you repair it? It's just good life lessons.
So what I'm hearing is you don't have to focus on like consequences and punishments, but how can we repair instead? And then how can we move forward for next time? So it's not so focused. I think that's what a lot of parents inadvertently focused on, because that's what was focused on for them as a child, was what's the punishment? Does the punishment fit the crime? How many weeks in are we grounded? Or, how long do we have to lose out on specific privileges or something like that? But instead it's focused on repairing what was broken or what was injured, and then moving forward for next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you find is the struggle point for parents in implementing that strategy?
You fall back on they feel like they're going to just get away with it. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like they feel like, oh, they don't know that it was wrong. They know it was wrong. They know it was wrong. They feel that. They
Right.
understand that. And that's why I like the idea of repairing it, because it still is there's still a quote unquote consequence, but it looks different. The consequence is we're going to need to repair this. If you broke something, let's figure out how to fix it. If you broke a rule, let's figure out what we can do the next time to make sure that rule doesn't get broken again, or that kind of thing. This is not to say if you have a child who like goes on social media and they're not supposed to open social media accounts, like there needs to be a consequence for that. You know what I mean? It's
Sure.
different
Mm-hmm.
when it's like, big emotions and they're having like a meltdown versus like blatantly, flagrantly breaking the rules. So
Right.
I
So
feel like
so
that's
that's a really good
different.
distinction. Yeah, that's a really good distinction to make. And so there's in the heat of the moment, we're going to try and repair what we did and then move on for next time. What if it's something where they're, like you said, like breaking a rule of the house, when it's not the heat of the moment, they're just choosing to do something that they know they're not supposed to be doing? How do you handle that in terms of the approach to consequence, discipline, etc.?
So I always try to make the consequence fit what was going on. So I use the
Okay.
Instagram example because I had that happen in my own house. Like my children are not allowed to have their own Instagram accounts nor their own YouTubes, and so they're
Okay.
just not. And my daughter like went on and like had and like created one, and all this, and my husband ended up finding it. It was ridiculous. Anyway, but so the consequence was like, so now you cannot have this in your, like, you can't have your iPad right now. And we are going to be checking on you. We're going to we had this conversation, like, we've lost trust. We
Mm-hmm.
trusted you, and it's really hard now. We don't know if we can trust you to do these things on your own, for you to use your iPad on your own if this is what you're doing. So we're spot checking. We're going to spot check
Sure.
and make sure that things aren't going like they shouldn't be going. And we had conversations. Like there are certain things, I think, where there are rules in the household, but then there's always as they get older, they come up with new ways to try and like work on see where the boundaries are. So
Right.
sometimes you just need, when that happened, I was like, I'm not ready. Like, I'm not ready for this to be the boundary that she crossed, but that's fine. So my husband and I said, let's pause. Like, Dad and I need to talk about this for a little bit, and then we'll get back to you. So if you don't have to answer in the moment there. You can leave and you can have a conversation with your spouse or your co-parent and figure that out, and then come back to it and be like, okay, so now we've talked. The adults have made decisions.
Right.
This is what it is.
That's another thing. That's another thing that I think parents struggle with too, is I have to have a consequence right away. I have to have one on the tip of my tongue for any possible slight that happens, because otherwise they won't understand. I think people think like of children often like you know, you hear about like if a dog pees on the carpet, like you have to get them immediately because you can't just take them back over to it and show them and say, hey, look what you did 3 hours ago. You can't do this. But children know when they do things wrong. They know what was wrong, and there's the benefit of time. You can say, hey, remember earlier today when you sprayed water all over the kitchen and I was really upset and I said we'd talk about it later? We're going to talk about it now, sort of thing. And they'll remember back and remember that that was wrong. You don't have to have an instant consequence at the ready for every given situation.
Yeah, especially because different situations will arise. Like suddenly you've got a teenager and then they're doing different things than they were doing when they were 10 or when they were 5. And so there are going to be, it's a learning curve for everybody, as like the kids and the adults as they are growing up.
Well, I really like the repair the trust that you were talking about there too, where it's you broke our trust. Rather than throwing a book, you broke the trust that we had. And so we're going to have to work to repair that. And until we do that, we're just going to, you know, put the guardrails a little bit closer. We're going to be watching to make sure you do the right thing. We're going to remove some of the privileges that you had, because privileges come with trust. And when you break trust, you lose the degree of the privilege that you had. You can still use the computer, but you can only use it where we can see you. You can still, you know, I don't know what the other, I was trying to think of another example, but you can still do these things, but we're going to have a little tighter watch on you because you broke our trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? It's been repaired. So now she has full access to her iPad, and she's like in there and talking on Roblox and talking on Discord. That's what she uses.
Yeah.
Talking to her friends.
And then that's something that you can reflect back on them too with and say, hey, remember a few months ago when you made that wrong choice and you broke a house rule, and then we had to repair the trust, and now doesn't it feel good to be back up to full speed doing those things again? And hey, that's just something that we learned from, and remember when that happened, and now you have repaired that trust. We will continue to trust you and continue to give you more responsibility and more privileges. And if there's another issue, then we'll just have to start that again, because there will be more issues, but we'll just try and slowly work on building that up even stronger.
Yep, absolutely. That's what it is. It's really about continuing to build that connection, that relationship that you have with your children. That's key.
Totally.
And just making sure that you're having those connections and conversations and talking about little things so that they'll continue to talk to you about the big things when the big things happen.
I love it. Okay, so helpful. Now, your Instagram is at Coping Skills for Kids. That's your website as well, Coping Skills for Kids. You have a course called Creating Coping Skill Champions at Homes, and that's where people can find you. And I know that this has been so helpful for my audience just to kind of hear and get a flavor for what you teach, because coping skills, like we talked about, are so important at this moment, at all moments. But it's really brought, I think the pandemic has really brought into light the mental health challenges that everybody has been facing, and thinking that they're the only ones that are dealing with that. And so this has been eye-opening time period, and I'm so glad that you're helping families to develop those coping skills. So thank you so much for coming on, for having this discussion, and for doing what you do to help families in this difficult moment for our world.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be able to share and put good things out into the world.
Awesome. Well, we'll link all the things in the show notes so that people can find your course, they can find your Instagram, they can find everything that you do, and please keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, will you hit the thumbs up button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos that I put out? And if you'd like to learn more or watch another video, you can click right over here to keep going. Have a good day. Keep up the good work.